All right, welcome back. Today's explainer is diving into an economic engine that literally touches almost everything we buy. We're going to deconstruct the secret formula behind China's industrial clusters, and we're not just talking about building factories here. We're talking about massive, self-reinforcing, living ecosystems. So let's just jump right in.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this, think about Shenzhen back in the late 1970s. It was essentially a quiet fishing town. Now fast forward to today, and it's this absolute behemoth, one of the largest, most sophisticated electronics ecosystems on the planet. I mean, the speed of that transformation is just staggering, right? But here's the thing, this Shenzhen miracle wasn't some lucky accident. It was the result of a highly specific, totally calculated strategy.
Here's the blueprint we're following today. 1. The Shenzhen miracle. 2. Setting the foundation. 3. Building the complete ecosystem. 4. Fueling the economic engine. And 5. The ultimate feedback loop.
All right, Section 1, the Shenzhen miracle and the incredible power of concentration.
So what's the end result of all this? In a word, speed. Unmatched speed. Because you have thousands of related firms literally clustered together, a company can rapidly prototype a product, immediately source the components locally, find super specialized suppliers right down the street, and then turn around and mass produce the whole thing at a massive scale. It completely shrinks the timeline from a whiteboard sketch to a physical product rolling off the line. And honestly, this is absolutely crucial for you and me because it's what dictates those rapid innovation cycles in the tech we use every single day. But how do you actually build a cluster like this from scratch? Which brings us to Section 2, setting the foundation, SEZs and massive infrastructure.
Okay, let's rewind to the late 70s and early 80s. China essentially set off this massive chronological domino effect. Step 1 was establishing special economic zones, or SEZs, offering big tax incentives and looser regulations. Step 2, boom. Foreign firms start pouring in, bringing their capital, their tech, and their management know-how. Now, steps 3 and 4 are where the real magic happens. Say a single toy manufacturer sets up shop. Well, almost overnight, you've got plastics suppliers, mold makers, packaging guys, and logistics firms moving in right next door just to serve that one factory. It's brilliant. The seed of a cluster has officially been planted.
But here's the catch. Those early clusters would have completely fizzled out without a massive foundation of infrastructure. They poured staggering amounts of money into highways, freight rail, massive ports near places like Shanghai, airports, power grids, and sprawling industrial parks around Guangzhou. And this is the key takeaway. They built all this before the massive demand even existed. By laying down the literal groundwork first, the pipes, the roads, the power, they guaranteed goods could move faster and cheaper later on. It basically armed the system for explosive growth.
Moving on to Section 3, building the complete ecosystem. Density and talent.
When a supply chain is fully realized in one specific place, the density is it's wild. Picture a single industrial district where raw material suppliers, component makers, tooling shops, packaging firms, logistics providers, and export services are all operating shoulder to shoulder. In these electronics hubs, you can grab circuit boards, batteries, and screens, get your whole product packaged, tested, and shipped out, all within a tiny radius of just a few kilometers. That kind of extreme density absolutely slashes transport costs, wipes out inventory bloat, and pretty much eliminates production delays.
And jamming all those firms together does something pretty amazing to the workforce, introducing a really cool economic concept, the labor market externality. Basically, when you cluster a ton of firms from the same industry into one spot, you naturally create this incredibly deep pool of highly skilled workers. It makes training a breeze and plummets hiring costs. But the really cool part? As workers inevitably hop from one firm to another, they take their insider knowledge with them. Information spreads like wildfire. So the entire cluster literally gets smarter and more efficient just by rubbing elbows.
All right, Section 4, fueling the economic engine, government and global markets. Now, a super unique ingredient in this whole Chinese formula was the absolutely fierce competition between local governments. Because local officials were essentially graded on economic growth, they fought tooth and nail to attract factories and build out infrastructure. And this rivalry led to some intense city-level specialization. You had Dongguan becoming the ultimate epicenter for electronics and contract manufacturing, Suzhou locked down electronics and advanced manufacturing, and Yiwu, it turned into the undisputed global heavyweight champion of small commodities and wholesale trade. These entire cities effectively transformed into hyper-specialized megafactories.
But you've got to wonder, right? Who on earth is actually buying all these products?
Well, the answer is export-led growth. Instead of just catering to their own domestic market, these clusters targeted the entire planet. And why is that a game changer? Because exporting creates astronomically huge production volumes. I mean, massive. And those giant orders are the absolute only way to achieve real economies of scale. They supercharge those learning effects we just talked about. And most importantly, those huge global orders are what actually justify spending millions to build highly specialized machinery and ultra-deep supplier networks in the first place.
We also need to talk about the role of the state here. The government actively used industrial policy and strategic targeting to prop up various specific sectors, things like electronics, EVs, solar panels, batteries, steel, and chemicals. The state basically hit the fast-forward button on cluster formation in these industries by using specific support mechanisms. We're talking subsidized land, huge credit lines from state-owned banks, massive research funding, and export assistance. They knew exactly which sectors they wanted to dominate.
And finally, Section 5, the ultimate feedback loop, the core formula realized.
Okay, so once a cluster hits a certain critical mass, this fundamental shift happens. It transforms into what economists call an agglomeration economy. It is the ultimate self-reinforcing feedback loop. Honestly, think of it like a biological ecosystem. The suppliers want to be there simply because the customers are there. The customers stay because the suppliers are there. Workers flock to the area because, hey, that's where the jobs are. And investors just pour money in because that's where the growth is happening. Once this loop really gets spinning, it creates this intense gravitational pull that is incredibly hard to stop or compete against.
And that brings us to the single biggest takeaway of this entire explainer, the core formula. The true breakthrough wasn't just building a massive factory or even a sprawling industrial park. The real innovation was engineering entire, living ecosystems where thousands of interconnected firms operate way more efficiently together than they ever could apart. The network itself is the superpower.
When you stack this up against how the rest of the world operates, the contrast is pretty jarring. A lot of countries will try to build an industrial park, or maybe they'll aggressively seek out foreign investment, or they'll focus on training a labor force. That's the standard playbook. But the Chinese formula? They did all of it at the exact same time. They paired massive, proactive infrastructure with long-term policy consistency. They didn't just hunt for foreign investment. They built unimaginably deep supplier networks, fueled by that aggressive local government competition. And they leveraged a huge domestic market alongside total export integration. Most places might manage to pull off one or two of these things. China uniquely combined almost all of them, all at once.
Which leaves us with a truly massive question as we look to the future. Is this unique core formula just a one-time historical phenomenon? A perfect storm of timing, policy, and scale? Or can another country actually step up, replicate this playbook, and build the next great global supply chain? It is a fascinating question, and one that's honestly keeping global CEOs and economists wide awake at night. Thanks so much for hanging out and deconstructing this with me today. Keep learning.